The dense canopy of trees overhead created a patchwork of shadows on the forest floor. Jackson could hear the distant calls of alien wildlife, each sound a reminder of the untamed nature of this world. The humid air clung to his skin as he wiped the sweat from his brow, squinting at the ancient ruins before him. Covered in vines and moss, the structure seemed almost like part of the landscape. "Hey, Jax, over here!" called Sarah, one of his team members, waving enthusiastically from a stone archway. Jackson made his way over, carefully stepping around protruding roots and jagged rocks. Sarah was a brilliant archaeologist, her excitement infectious. She pointed at the ground where intricate carvings depicted scenes of what looked like an ancient civilization. "These markings are incredible," she said, her voice filled with awe. "They're unlike anything we've seen before." Jackson nodded, his military training always making him cautious. "Keep your guard up. We don't know what else might be in these ruins." As the team continued to explore, they found more evidence of advanced engineering, remarkable for a world considered primitive by human standards. The ruins hinted at a civilization that had once been highly sophisticated, only to disappear without a trace. Their discovery was interrupted by a loud crash from deeper within the ruins. Weapons drawn, Jackson led his team toward the sound. What they found was beyond anything they could have imagined: a massive alien spacecraft, partially buried in the earth and overgrown with vegetation. "Holy shit," muttered Carlos, another team member. "This thing is huge." Jackson approached the ship cautiously. "Let's see if we can find a way inside. There might be survivors or answers." The interior of the alien ship was dark and foreboding. Jackson's flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing twisted metal and broken machinery. The air was thick with the scent of burned electronics and something else, something organic. "Stay close," Jackson instructed, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "We don't know what's in here." They moved slowly through the wreckage, their footsteps the only sound. As they rounded a corner, they came across a large chamber, and at its center lay an alien figure. Her skin was a luminescent blue, her features delicate and regal. She wore elaborate armor that was both beautiful and functional. Sarah gasped. "Is she alive?" Jackson knelt beside the alien, checking for signs of life. Her breathing was shallow, and she had several deep wounds. "Barely. We need to get her back to the base." "Jackson, look at this," said Marcus, another team member, pointing to a device on the alien's wrist. "It looks like some kind of translator." With a few adjustments, the device began to emit a series of clicks and whirs before settling on a language they could understand. The alien woman's eyes fluttered open, and she spoke weakly. "Help, please." "We're going to help you," Jackson said, lifting her gently. "Hang in there." The journey back to their base was tense. They moved as quickly as they could without jostling the injured alien. Every sound in the jungle made Jackson's heart race, fearing they were being watched. Once back at the base, they placed the alien on a makeshift bed. Sarah and the others worked frantically to stabilize her, using what little medical knowledge they had. Jackson stood guard, his eyes scanning the perimeter for any signs of danger. Hours passed, and the alien's condition slowly improved. She opened her eyes again, this time with more clarity. "Thank you," she said, her voice stronger. "I am Queen Loretta of the Zarnath Empire. You have saved my life." Jackson nodded. "I'm Jackson, and this is my team. Can you tell us what happened?" Loretta's eyes filled with pain. "My ship was attacked by a rival faction. They sought to capture or kill me. I managed to escape, but I did not expect to crash here." Jackson exchanged a glance with Sarah. "We'll do what we can to help you, Queen Loretta, but we need to understand more about your people and why you're here." Loretta nodded, her expression determined despite her injuries. "I will tell you everything, but first we must be prepared. They will come for me." Jackson's team worked tirelessly to tend to Queen Loretta's wounds. Despite their limited resources, they managed to stabilize her condition. The advanced technology embedded in her armor and the translator device proved invaluable, bridging the gap between their worlds. As Queen Loretta regained her strength, she began to communicate more effectively. The translator device, now fully functional, allowed her to share her story with the humans. She described the Zarnath Empire, a civilization spanning multiple star systems, and the political turmoil that had led to her being targeted by rivals. Why would they want to capture or kill you? Jackson asked. His curiosity piqued. Loretta sighed, her eyes reflecting the burden of leadership. As queen, I hold significant influence over the Zarnath Empire. My rivals believe that by eliminating me, they can seize power and control our resources. My capture would destabilize the Empire, plunging it into chaos. Jackson nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. We'll do what we can to protect you, but we're just a small team. We'll need to find a way to communicate with your people and let them know you're safe. Loretta's expression softened. Your bravery is commendable, Jackson. I will help you as best I can. My ship's communication systems were damaged in the crash, but there might be a way to repair them using your technology. As they discussed their options, a distant rumble echoed through the jungle. Jackson's instincts kicked in, and he signaled for his team to be on high alert. The sound grew louder, and soon the unmistakable hum of alien engines filled the air. "They found us," Loretta whispered, her eyes widening with fear. Jackson's heart pounded in his chest. "Everyone get ready. We have to defend the base." The team scrambled to their positions, setting up makeshift barricades and preparing their weapons. Jackson stood beside Loretta, his resolve unshaken. "We won't let them take you." The first wave of Zarnath soldiers descended from the sky, their sleek ships hovering above the jungle canopy. They disembarked with military precision, their weapons trained on the human outpost. Jackson's team opened fire, using their knowledge of the terrain to their advantage. Explosions rocked the area as the battle raged on. Jackson moved with calculated precision, directing his team and taking down enemies with expert marksmanship. Despite their primitive technology, the humans held their ground, driven by their determination to protect Loretta. In the midst of the chaos, Loretta accessed the remnants of her ship's communication system, attempting to send a distress signal. Her fingers danced over the controls, her concentration unwavering. "Come on, work," she muttered, frustration evident in her voice. Just as the tide of the battle seemed to turn against them, a message crackled through the static. "This is the Zarnath Royal Fleet. We have received your distress signal and are en route to your location. Hold on." Relief washed over Jackson. "We did it, Loretta. They're coming for us." The Zarnath soldiers, realizing their reinforcements were imminent, began to retreat. Jackson's team pressed their advantage, driving the enemy back. As the last of the attackers fled, the sound of approaching ships grew louder. Moments later, the sky was filled with the sight of Zarnath Royal Fleet vessels. They descended gracefully, their presence a testament to the power and sophistication of Loretta's people. As the ships landed, a group of Zarnath soldiers emerged, their leader approaching Loretta with a respectful bow. "Queen Loretta, we are here to take you home," the commander said, his voice filled with reverence. Loretta nodded, her gaze shifting to Jackson and his team. "These humans saved my life. They are brave and resourceful. We owe them our gratitude." The commander turned to Jackson, his expression serious. "Thank you for protecting our queen. Your actions will not be forgotten." As Loretta prepared to leave with her people, she looked back at Jackson. "Our paths may part here, but know that you have earned a place of honor in the Zarnath Empire. Should you ever need our aid, we will be there." Jackson nodded, a sense of accomplishment and camaraderie filling his heart. "Take care, Queen Loretta, and good luck." With that, Loretta and her people departed, leaving Jackson and his team to reflect on the extraordinary events that had transpired. They had made first contact with an alien civilization, forged an alliance, and defended their world against a formidable enemy. As the jungle returned to its natural state, Jackson couldn't help but wonder what other adventures awaited them in the vast, uncharted reaches of space. Light years away, in the heart of the Zarnath Empire, King Thalos stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Resolute. His eyes were fixed on the holographic display of the galaxy, pinpointing the location of every known faction within their domain. The news of Queen Loretta's disappearance had thrown the Empire into turmoil. "Your Highness, our scouts have reported signs of her escape pod in a remote sector," said General Varrock, his chief advisor. "We believe she may have crash-landed on an uncharted world." Thalos clenched his fists, his face a mask of determination. Send the fleet. I want every ship in that sector. We must find her before our enemies do. The Zarnath fleet, a formidable armada of sleek, advanced ships, mobilized with unparalleled speed. King Thalos personally oversaw the mission, driven by a mix of desperation and rage. He could not afford to lose Loretta, both for personal reasons and for the stability of their empire. As the fleet approached the uncharted world where Loretta had crashed, they deployed scouts to comb the planet's surface. The dense jungles and rugged terrain made the search difficult, but the Zarnath soldiers were relentless. Scan for any signs of advanced technology, Thalos ordered, his voice echoing through the command deck. Loretta will not be far from her ship. Back at the human outpost, Queen Loretta was recovering well under the care of Jackson's team. Despite the language barrier, they had managed to establish a rudimentary form of communication, thanks to the translator device and Loretta's growing understanding of human language. One evening, as the team gathered around a makeshift table, Jackson addressed them. We need to find a way to communicate with Loretta's people. If we can reach them, we can secure her safety and maybe even forge an alliance. Loretta nodded, understanding the urgency. She had been working tirelessly to repair the ship's communication system, but progress was slow. Our technology is advanced, but your tools are primitive, she said, choosing her words carefully. Jackson chuckled. We're doing our best. Can you teach us how to use your tech? Over the next few days, Loretta and the team worked side by side, blending their knowledge and skills. She explained the intricacies of Zarnath technology, while Jackson and his crew adapted their methods to make the repairs. Despite their progress, the atmosphere was tense. Everyone knew the Zarnath forces would eventually find them. One night, as Jackson and Loretta sat by the flickering light of a campfire, she opened up about her fears. Thalos will not stop until he finds me, she said quietly. He is a powerful king, but also a vengeful one. He will not tolerate the thought of humans protecting me. Jackson placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We'll be ready. We may be primitive by your standards, but we've survived worse. Together, we can stand against him. The peace of the night was shattered by the sudden roar of engines overhead. Jackson sprang to his feet, his instincts honed from years of combat. Everyone to your positions, we've got incoming. The Zarnath scouts had located their base, and now, a wave of enemy soldiers was descending upon them. The human outpost was a flurry of activity as Jackson's team scrambled to defend their position. Makeshift barricades were erected and weapons were distributed. Loretta, despite her injuries, insisted on joining the fight. I will not hide while others risk their lives for me, she declared, grabbing a weapon from the armory. The first wave of Zarnath soldiers approached with military precision, their sleek armor glinting in the moonlight. Jackson led his team with unwavering resolve, using guerrilla tactics to compensate for their technological disadvantage. Hold the line, he shouted, firing at the advancing soldiers. Explosions lit up the night as the two forces clashed, the air thick with the sound of gunfire and the smell of burning metal. Loretta fought beside Jackson, her combat skills evident despite her weakened state. Her presence inspired the humans, who fought with renewed vigor. Despite their best efforts, the Zarnath forces began to overwhelm them. Fall back to the inner perimeter, Jackson ordered, directing his team to a more defensible position. As they retreated, he noticed a group of Zarnath soldiers attempting to flank them. Loretta, with me, he called, leading her toward the flank. Together, they launched a counterattack, catching the Zarnath soldiers off guard. The skirmish was brutal, but their combined efforts managed to push back the enemy. Amid the chaos, a Zarnath officer shouted an order, and the attacking soldiers began to retreat. The first battle was over, but Jackson knew it was only the beginning. They had managed to repel the scouts, but the main fleet would not be far behind. As the dust settled, Jackson and Loretta stood amidst the wreckage, surveying the damage. Their victory was bittersweet, with many wounded and their defenses weakened. We did it, Jackson said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. But they'll be back, and in greater numbers. Loretta nodded, her expression grim. We need to prepare. If we are to survive the next assault, We must combine our strengths and find a way to communicate with my people. The team set to work, reinforcing their defenses and tending to the wounded. Jackson and Loretta's bond grew stronger, their mutual respect and trust deepening with each passing day. They knew that the real battle was yet to come, and they would need every ounce of their courage and ingenuity to survive. The morning after the battle, the atmosphere at the human outpost was a mix of relief and determination. The survivors moved with purpose, tending to the wounded and reinforcing their defenses. Jackson and Queen Loretta convened in a hastily assembled war room, a map of the area spread out before them. "We can't survive another attack like that," Jackson said, his voice tinged with frustration. "We need more firepower, better defenses." Loretta nodded in agreement. "My people possess technology that could turn the tide. If we can repair my ship's communication array, we might be able to call for reinforcements." "Time is our enemy," Jackson replied. "Thalos won't wait. We need to work fast." They gathered the team, splitting into groups to tackle the necessary tasks. Carlos and Sarah were assigned to assist Loretta with the ship's repairs, while Jackson led the fortification efforts. Hours turned into days as they worked tirelessly. Loretta's knowledge of Zarnath technology proved invaluable, but the humans' adaptability and resourcefulness were equally critical. They scoured the jungle for materials, using anything they could find to bolster their defenses. During one particularly grueling session, Loretta paused to observe Jackson as he directed the construction of an improvised turret. His leadership and tenacity impressed her, and she felt a growing respect and admiration for the human. "You never cease to amaze me, Jackson," Loretta said, approaching him. "Your people have such resilience, such spirit." Jackson smiled, wiping sweat from his brow. "We do what we have to survive, and right now, that means keeping you safe." Their bond deepened, a mutual understanding forming between them. They were from different worlds, but their goals were aligned: survival and the protection of their people. As they worked side by side, Jackson and Loretta shared stories about their respective worlds. Loretta spoke of the grandeur of the Zarnath Empire, its intricate politics and advanced technology. Jackson, in turn, described the history of humanity's expansion into space, their struggles, and their triumphs. "Your empire sounds incredible," Jackson remarked one evening as they took a rare moment to rest. "But it also seems fr agile." Loretta sighed. "It is. Power struggles and rival factions threaten our stability. That's why Thalos is so desperate to find me. My capture would give him the upper hand." Jackson nodded thoughtfully. "Humanity has its share of conflicts too, but we also have a knack for uniting when it matters most." Loretta smiled. "I've seen that. Your team, your people, they fight with such heart. It's something I admire." As they grew closer, Loretta's presence began to feel less like an obligation and more like a partnership. She was no longer just a queen in need of protection. She was a valuable ally and a friend. Their discussions also led to practical exchanges of knowledge. Loretta taught the humans how to operate and repair Zarnath technology, while Jackson and his team shared their survival tactics and combat strategies. The blending of their skills and knowledge created a formidable force, ready to face the challenges ahead. With the communication array finally repaired, Loretta sent a distress signal to the Zarnath Empire. They could only hope that reinforcements would arrive in time. In the meantime, they prepared for the inevitable attack from Thalos's fleet. The outpost was transformed into a fortress. Defensive turrets, energy shields, and traps were strategically placed around the perimeter. Jackson drilled his team tirelessly, ensuring they were ready for the impending assault. One afternoon, as they tested the new defenses, a holographic message flickered to life. It was from the Zarnath Royal Fleet, acknowledging receipt of the distress signal and promising to send reinforcements. "Reinforcements are on their way," Loretta announced, relief evident in her voice. "But we must hold out until they arrive." Jackson nodded. "We will. We've come too far to give up now." As they continued their preparations, Jackson and Loretta developed a strategy that combined human ingenuity with Zarnath precision. They planned ambushes, fallback positions, and contingency plans for every possible scenario. One evening, as the sun set over the jungle, Jackson and Loretta stood side by side, surveying their work. The outpost was as ready as it could be, and the team was prepared to defend it with their lives. "We've done all we can," Jackson said quietly. "Now we wait." Loretta placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture of solidarity. "Whatever happens, Jackson, know that you have earned my deepest respect and gratitude. You and your team have shown extraordinary courage." Jackson met her gaze, a sense of determination burning in his eyes. "We'll make it through this, Loretta. Together." As night fell, the team settled into their positions, nerves on edge but spirits high. They were ready for the battle to come, united by a common cause and strengthened by the bonds they had forged. The stage was set for the final confrontation with Thalos's forces. The fate of both civilizations hung in the balance, and only time would tell if their alliance would be enough to secure victory. The night was unnervingly quiet, with only the soft chirping of alien insects breaking the silence. Jackson stood atop the outpost's central tower, his eyes scanning the horizon. He could feel the tension in the air, every muscle in his body taut with anticipation. The Zarnath reinforcements were still hours away, and they had to hold out until then. "Contact," came the call from Carlos, who was manning one of the lookout posts. "Multiple ships inbound." Jackson grabbed his binoculars and peered into the distance. The sleek forms of Zarnath fighters were visible against the darkening sky, their engines glowing a menacing red. He activated his communicator, broadcasting to the entire team. "All units, this is it. Remember the plan. Stick to your positions and watch each other's backs. We can do this." The Zarnath ships descended rapidly, their weapons already firing. Explosions erupted around the outpost as energy blasts hit the ground, sending dirt and debris flying. The humans responded with their own firepower, turrets and rifles lighting up the night. Loretta fought alongside Jackson, her combat prowess evident as she directed the defense. She moved with grace and precision, her alien weapon cutting down attackers with lethal efficiency. The bond between her and Jackson had grown stronger, their coordination seamless. Despite their best efforts, the sheer number of enemy forces began to take its toll. The outpost's defenses were holding, but barely. Jackson knew they needed to buy more time for the reinforcements to arrive. "Fall back to the secondary perimeter," he ordered. "We need to draw them in closer." The team retreated in an orderly fashion, luring the Zarnath soldiers into a trap. As the enemy advanced, they triggered hidden mines and automated turrets, decimating their ranks. The humans and Loretta regrouped, ready for the next wave. Just as the tide seemed to be turning in their favor, a sudden explosion rocked the outpost from within. Jackson turned to see a plume of smoke rising from one of the main buildings. His heart sank as he realized what had happened. "We have a traitor," Loretta said, her eyes narrowing. "Someone has sabotaged our defenses." Panic threatened to set in, but Jackson forced himself to stay calm. "We need to find them before they do any more damage. Sarah, Marcus, with me." They moved quickly through the outpost, searching for signs of the saboteur. As they approached the communications room, they found the door blown open. Inside, a Zarnath soldier stood over the console, frantically trying to disable it further. "Stop right there!" Jackson shouted, raising his weapon. The soldier turned, revealing a familiar face. It was one of Loretta's own guards, his expression twisted with fear and desperation. "I had no choice," he stammered. "Thalos promised me freedom if I helped him." Jackson fired, taking the traitor down before he could do any more harm. But the damage was already done. The communications array was in ruins, cutting off their link to the incoming reinforcements. Loretta knelt beside the fallen guard, her face a mask of sorrow and resolve. "He was a friend I never suspected." "We can't dwell on it now," Jackson said, helping her to her feet. "We need to get back to the fight." As they returned to the front lines, they saw that the enemy had taken advantage of the confusion. The Zarnath forces were pressing their attack, pushing the defenders to their limits. Jackson knew they couldn't hold out much longer without reinforcements. In a desperate bid to turn the tide, Jackson and Loretta led a daring counterattack. They fought side by side, their movements synchronized and their determination unyielding. Despite their exhaustion, they managed to break through the enemy lines, creating a momentary lull in the battle. But the victory came at a great cost. As they regrouped, Jackson noticed a figure lying on the ground, gravely injured. It was Marcus, one of his closest friends and a key member of the team. "Marcus, hang in there," Jackson said, kneeling beside him. Marcus smiled weakly. "It's been an honor, Jax. Tell my family I did my best." Jackson felt a lump in his throat as Marcus's eyes closed for the last time. The sacrifice of his friend fueled his resolve. He looked at Loretta, seeing the same determination mirrored in her eyes. "We're not done yet," he said, standing tall. "Let's finish this." With renewed determination, Jackson and Loretta rallied their forces. The outpost was battered and the defenders weary, but their spirit was unbroken. They knew this was their last stand, and they were prepared to fight to the end. As the enemy regrouped for a final assault, the sky suddenly lit up with a brilliant flash. Jackson looked up to see the unmistakable forms of Zarnath royal fleet ships descending from the heavens. The reinforcements had arrived. A cheer went up from the defenders as the Zarnath fleet engaged the enemy, their advanced weaponry tearing through Thalos's forces. The tide of battle shifted dramatically as the reinforcements joined the fray, driving the attackers back. In the chaos, Jackson and Loretta led a charge towards the enemy command center, determined to confront Thalos himself. They fought their way through waves of soldiers, their determination unwavering. Finally, they reached the heart of the enemy camp. Thalos stood before them, his expression a mix of fury and disbelief. "You," he spat, glaring at Jackson, "a primitive human dares to challenge me?" Jackson raised his weapon, his eyes locked on Thalos. "This ends now." The final battle was fierce and brutal. Thalos fought with the strength and skill of a seasoned warrior, but Jackson and Loretta's combined efforts proved too much for him. As they clashed, Loretta managed to disarm Thalos, forcing him to his knees. "It's over, Thalos," Loretta said, her voice cold and resolute. "Your reign of terror ends here." Thalos looked up at her, a flicker of fear in his eyes. "You won't kill me. You don't have the courage." Loretta's expression softened for a moment, then hardened with resolve. "You're right, but I will ensure you face justice." With Thalos captured, the remaining enemy forces quickly surrendered. The battlefield fell silent as the realization of their victory sank in. Jackson looked around at the weary but triumphant faces of his team and the Zarnath soldiers. "We did it," he said, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. "We actually did it." Loretta smiled, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Thank you, Jackson. Without you and your team, none of this would have been possible." As the dawn broke over the jungle, the survivors began the process of rebuilding and healing. The alliance between humans and the Zarnath Empire had been forged in the crucible of battle, and it would endure as a testament to their strength and unity. For Jackson and Loretta, the journey was far from over, but as they stood together, they knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as allies and friends. The aftermath of the battle was a mix of relief, sorrow, and hope. The jungle, once filled with the sounds of combat, was now eerily quiet. The smell of burnt vegetation and scorched metal lingered in the air, a stark reminder of the fierce conflict that had just ended. Jackson stood on a hill overlooking the outpost, surveying the damage. The once pristine landscape was scarred, but the sight of his team and the Zarnath soldiers working together to rebuild brought a sense of accomplishment and optimism. The alliance that had been forged in blood and fire was now stronger than ever. Queen Loretta approached Jackson, her regal presence undiminished despite the trials they had faced. "Jackson, our engineers have begun repairs on my ship. We should be able to re-establish full communication with my people soon. They will send more support and supplies to help rebuild your outpost." Jackson nodded, grateful for her assistance. "Your people have been incredible, Loretta. We couldn't have done this without them, or you." Loretta smiled warmly. "And we could not have succeeded without you and your team's bravery and ingenuity. You have shown us the strength and resilience of humanity." As the days passed, the outpost transformed from a battlefield into a thriving hub of cooperation. Human and Zarnath engineers worked side by side, sharing knowledge and resources. The outpost became a symbol of unity, a beacon of hope for what could be achieved when two civilizations work together. One evening, as the sun set over the horizon, casting a golden glow over the jungle, a ceremony was held to honor the fallen and celebrate their victory. Soldiers from both sides gathered, their differences set aside in recognition of their shared struggle. Jackson stood before the assembled crowd, his heart heavy with the memory of those they had lost, but also filled with pride for what they had accomplished. "We have faced incredible challenges and made great sacrifices," he began, his voice steady. "But through our unity and determination, we have forged a bond that transcends our differences. Together, we have shown that even in the darkest of times, hope can prevail." Queen Loretta stepped forward, her voice carrying the weight of her authority and gratitude. "Today we stand not as separate peoples, but as allies and friends. The bravery and spirit of the human race have earned our deepest respect. Let this be the beginning of a new era of cooperation and mutual support between our civilizations." The crowd erupted in applause, the sound echoing through the jungle. It was a moment of triumph and solidarity, a promise of a brighter future. After the ceremony, Jackson and Loretta walked through the outpost, admiring the progress that had been made. The barriers of language and culture that had once seemed insurmountable were now bridges of understanding and friendship. "What's next for you, Jackson?" Loretta asked, her curiosity genuine. Jackson looked out at the horizon, a sense of purpose in his eyes. "I think it's time to explore new opportunities. There's a lot we can learn from each other. I want to be a part of that." Loretta nodded, understanding his sentiment. "The Zarnath Empire would be honored to have you. Your experience and perspective would be invaluable to us." Jackson smiled, feeling a sense of belonging he had never known before. "I'd like that, but first, we have a lot of rebuilding to do here." Together, they continued their walk, discussing plans for the future. The alliance between humans and the Zarnath Empire was just beginning, and there was much work to be done. But with mutual respect and cooperation, they knew they could overcome any obstacle. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Jackson felt a renewed sense of hope and excitement for the future. The journey ahead was uncertain, but it was a journey he was ready to face, alongside his new friends and allies. The bond forged in the crucible of battle had created a new beginning, one that promised a future of peace, progress, and unity among the stars.